everyone, and welcome. My name is Sophia Wardell, and today we have a very special guest, dark romantasy author and motion graphics designer, Jacob von Tobel. Jacob von Tobel is the author of the novels Curse of Flame and Fated to Be Monsters, launching in early 2025. His stories focus around the human heart in conflict with itself. Thanks for joining us today, Jacob.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Sure, we're excited to talk to you today about world building.
Mhm.
So, what sources of inspiration do you draw from when constructing the worlds within your novels?
So that's a really great question, and I feel like I get that quite a bit. In my talks that I give, I try to really focus down. The first thing is a world building route.
Mm,
And a good way to summarize what that is what is the one thing that sets your world apart from anything else? Now
mm,
this isn't just necessarily sort of what it looks like on the tin, right? So for instance, let's like take Star Wars as an example. It isn't spaceships, it's not aliens. The world building route for Star Wars is the Force itself, the sort of the power that they work with. It's different from most other sci-fi settings. It sets it apart, and all the stories in that generally go around it. They're built around that general concept. So how I draw inspiration is figuring out what's that one unique thing in this setting that's going to make it pop, that's going to make it slightly different from every other fantasy setting that sort of competes in that space.
And on the note of just approaching the process of developing these other fantastical elements in a way that feels grounded and integral to the story, how do you do that?
So basically, the way that you approach it is by managing expectations. That's really, really important, and it's something that you have to think about as you're going through your world building. So if I had all day to talk about this, I would tell you that you really have to go through and flush out your world step by step. You have to consider, what's the roof and this floor, sort of the ceiling and the floor of it, so to speak. What's possible, what's within the realm of expectation, and what are you communicating to your readers, and are they picking up on that?
Mm,
Give a slightly less vague answer, it would be very similar if you wrote a vampire romance novel, and in the third act you revealed that one of them was a cyborg. The expectations are just completely out of whack there. People go into
right.
stories with certain expectations. They see it in your cover, they see it on the blurb on the back, they see it in the small details that you give about the world. So manage those expectations. The reason that people can have these big reveals on, like, let's say, like special powers, or if someone was actually alive when people thought they were dead, the way they do that is managing expectations, is that within the realm of possibility, it feels right. It feels like, oh, that tracks. That's something that maybe they'd be able to do. But it is tricky. It's definitely a thing you have to pay attention to, and that's where beta readers really come in if it hasn't been
Mm.
brought up already. As a writer, you need to be able to find a group of beta readers, and it's hard. My heart goes out to everyone who's looking for some. Luckily, I've been able to find a few after a few years. But those beta readers will really tell you if the story feels like it's living in the world as if it's meeting the expectations that you set initially.
Right. That's great insight. And, trying to kind of stay in the box of your genre and not just going too far out to where it just doesn't make any sense at all. And
Absolutely.
yeah.
I was just going to add on top of that, just really quick. That's not to say that the genre conventions are something that you need to like, they are solid and they can't be moved ever.
Mhm.
But pay attention to when people break them, how they're breaking them. You'll find
Mhm.
it's mostly in the kinds of characters, the sorts of stories they're telling. They're not breaking, they're not trying to make or like I guess like when you have crossovers, like nothing comes to mind immediately, but like going back to our vampire romance example, if you wanted to bring in sci-fi elements, okay, that's totally possible. I'm sure it's been done, but you need to identify what parts of those two tropes, two parts of those two genres actually work with each other.
And on the note of characters, because we did talk a little bit about those characters and how important they are, how can an author balance these internal heart struggles with the creation of an immersive fantasy world?
This one's a little tricky. The best way I can think about it is that the setting might be sci-fi, it might be fantasy, it might be, any degree of fantastical element. It can have the craziest things in the world, but the characters should still be human, even if they're not. Even if your book is about strictly non-human beings, as readers, most tend to be human, so they want to read about human conflicts, or conflicts they can relate to. So basically, my best advice for that is build your fantasy setting so that it will complement the story you're telling, or at the very least,
Mm.
the complications it's throwing at your characters, because as writers, your job is to give your characters problems. The problems are the correct problems. Uh, at the heart of all of these stories, people are looking for something they can relate to or something that they can see themselves in to a degree. So I would not so much think of let's build this fantasy setting and then build the characters that go with it. What I would tell you to do, build the fantasy world, figure out how it works. How does it go by on a day-to-day basis? Where do people go for work? How do they make money? What are its problems, its scarcities? Then create your characters and just let them loose in it. Don't immediately think of this character's, oh, I want this character to be this. It's this factor of the world. Even before you have the story, just figure out the story, figure out that like really interesting heart of it, and then just let these characters run loose in that setting, and it will become obvious to you over time. How do they factor into it? Small elements that come out of, you'll say, oh, actually it would go this way. They would actually be involved in this sort of job, this would be a factor of it. And if you don't have those immediately, don't worry too much about it. That's where editing comes in. And let me tell you, if you're not already familiar with concept, your first draft will always be rough. And that's where in the second and the third and the fourth and the fifth and the on and on and on, looking back to the world you've created, looking at forward to this character living in it, and you'll continually see more touch points, more places that they can sort of roll together as you slowly build up this story in drafts.
Well, Jacob, thank you. That was wonderful insight on world building.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Lastly, where can our listeners find and connect with you?
Yeah, you can find me at J Von Tobel Writes on all social media platforms. I'm the most active on Instagram, but you can find me pretty much anywhere. Feel free to go to my website, jacobvontobel.com, and that's where I sort of post updates, information about my books. And you know what? I really like world building. I'm kind of a nerd about it. So if you go and you look around my social media channels, you're going to find plenty of advice for building that.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's interview with dark romantasy author and motion graphics designer Jacob Von Tobel. Be sure to check out our website for more videos. Wishing you all a fulfilling and successful writing journey.